fellow music fans, welcome back to Psychology of Rock. If you're new here, my name's Nina, and today we're diving into a topic that I think a lot of you will find extremely validating and maybe even want to send to your significant other or your crush, because apparently, according to research, metalheads may just make the most loyal romantic partners. Yes, you heard that right. The very same genre that's often associated with aggression, rebellion, and chaos may in reality attract some of the most emotionally steady, faithful people out there, including in relationships. So today I want to unpack this and talk about the viral study that made headlines with this claim, because while it is incredibly interesting and I personally believe that the findings are likely accurate based on other studies in this area that we'll also talk about, this one definitely has some flaws. As always, you can find the citations for all of the studies that I used to make this video in the description box, just in case you want to read them for yourself. But let's go ahead and dive in. So firstly, where did this idea come from? Well, a few years ago, a UK-based dating app called Victoria Milan, which by the way is apparently specifically for people seeking extramarital affairs, ran an analysis on thousands of its users to see how musical taste might relate to romantic behavior. And it kind of seems like even they were surprised by what they found. Among users who admitted to cheating, they determined that metal fans were the least likely to think about their affair partner while listening to music, which supposedly suggested a stronger emotional attachment to their actual partner. And although I think this is a very odd metric to try to measure loyalty with, the mainstream media ran with the result, spinning sensational headlines that surprisingly actually painted metalheads in a positive light for once, which is something that we almost never see. And I know you're going to want to know how other genres ranked in their likelihood to cheat percentages, so let's go ahead and take a look. We have jazz all the way at the top at 19%, salsa at 14%, pop at 13%, country at 12%, rap at 9%, classical at 8%, blues at 6%, reggae and rock both at 5%, electronica at 4%, indie at 3%, and heavy metal right at the bottom only at 2%. But before you start judging your friends' playlists, please keep in mind that numbers like these really do not tell the full story. The first obvious problem here is that this wasn't an academic study. It was a marketing survey from a cheating website. I really can't think of anything that would be a bigger red flag than that. My second issue here is that it's also clearly biased and not at all population representative. I mean, how many metalheads do you know who are actively using a cheating-focused dating app? My third issue with this is that the methodology itself can sometimes be problematic. They relied completely on self-reported data, which can be totally unreliable, especially when we're talking about sensitive topics like infidelity. I also think the claim about emotional attachment is a huge leap in this context. Just because someone isn't thinking about a lover when listening to music does not necessarily mean that they are any more loyal. But even beyond all this, I just think it's almost comical that a study was trying to assess fidelity in a setting where, by very definition, every single participant was an admitted cheater. So I really don't think we can take this study as hard evidence that metalheads are more faithful. But like I said earlier, I do think the findings are in line with other research. And I think it's at least somewhat interesting that even within a pool of admitted cheaters, that metalheads still showed the most loyalty-related responses. So let's take a step back and look at the real peer-reviewed research and see why this pattern actually makes sense. Because even though the viral faithful metalhead claim may have started as clickbait, it unintentionally reflected something that real psychology has been backing for years. Now, normally, because it's one of my biggest areas of focus, I would start with the personality factors at play. But unfortunately for metalheads, this really doesn't help our case too much. But let's go ahead and look at the data. As a starting point, we know that across multiple studies and reviews that the most consistent correlates of partner infidelity in the 5-factor model of personality are low conscientiousness and low agreeableness, both of which do tend to align with the scores in these traits for metalheads. Higher extroversion and higher neuroticism are also sometimes associated with greater infidelity, which aligns a lot less with metalheads, and openness to experience, the trait that metalheads tend to score the very highest in, shows mixed results across studies. So that one's kind of a wash. I want to quickly mention here, however, that there are several non-Big Five personality characteristics that align with metalheads that I think do point more towards fidelity, like emotional regulation, empathy, authenticity, emotional intelligence, and a strong loyalty to both their social group and personal values. This is something that I go into great detail about in the video I did about the personality profiles of metalheads. I will go ahead and link that down below just in case you didn't see it. But clearly, personality research alone is definitely not a slam dunk for supporting the claim that metalheads are more faithful. So let's go ahead and look at some research that does help us connect the dots. First, we have the 2015 study from the University of Queensland that showed fans of extreme music actually use metal to calm down after stressful experiences. It found that instead of becoming more aggressive by listening, their mood improves and their heart rate drops. I love this study. This is another one that I have a full video about that I will also link down below. But I really do believe that this one directly relates to fidelity. If we think about emotional regulation, being able to handle stress instead of exploding or shutting down, this is one of the strongest predictors of loyalty and long-term relationship stability. And this was certainly not the only study to equate the genre to emotional regulation. In fact, I will link several more down below. But I also want to talk about the Spotify study from 2015, which looked at listener data across genres and concluded that metal fans were the most loyal music listeners. And while of course this study can't be considered empirical research, I don't think that anyone involved in the genre is going to question these findings. Basically, it just showed that metalheads are the most likely to keep returning to their favorite artists rather than chasing whatever's trending, which is something that I think we can all personally attest to. This kind of behavioral consistency points to deeper traits like commitment, emotional connection, and reliability, which again are all core components of faithfulness. But back to our peer-reviewed empirical research. A study from 2016 found that metal fans use music as a psychological buffer against fear and insecurity. In other words, it helps them feel grounded and self-assured, which is key because we know that people who are confident and emotionally secure are much less likely to seek validation outside of their relationship. In 2021, researchers also described metal as the thinking person's music, finding that fans tend to score higher on need for cognition, meaning that they think deeply and they act deliberately. Studies showed that these same traits are linked to stronger emotional awareness and more intentional, values-based relationship choices. And more broadly, reviews published in 2022 show that metal listeners often use their music to build resilience and emotional strength. This adds support to the claim we're talking about because we know that people who are able to face their emotions rather than avoiding them are much more likely to be dependable partners and friends. But even beyond these individual traits, there's also something to be said about the culture of metal itself. Studies on metal subcultures have long shown that metal is one of the most tight-knit, identity-driven music communities in the entire world. For most fans, being a metalhead goes well beyond just listening to the music. It is actually a part of who they are as a person. That deep sense of belonging creates an entire culture built on authenticity, solidarity, and loyalty, not just to the music, but to the people within it. And when loyalty and commitment are central to your community values, it is not a stretch to imagine those same values translating somehow into your romantic life. People who stay devoted to their scene for years or even decades are clearly showing a pattern of emotional consistency and attachment that often mirrors how they approach relationships. So even though there is not currently a truly scientific study that directly links metalheads to being faithful romantic partners, I really do think the claim itself does actually align surprisingly well with what the real psychological research tells us. But I want to hear what you think. Do these claims truly hold up in real life? I am dying to hear your thoughts, and I am definitely looking forward to reading the comments and hearing about all your experiences, so please leave them down below. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the analysis. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you have not done so already, and I will see you in the next video.